Timing is everything. That even goes for real life in the sense you can be delayed 30 seconds from leaving your house and then subsequently miss the bus. You then kick yourself, kick the wall, kick somebody else, and before you know it, you're in jail wondering what happened. It's a classic story. Thankfully, you will eventually be released, but when it comes to wrestling, certain performers don't get the same reprieve. On occasion, you can just smell it in the air that the time to give a wrestler a push has arrived, but those in charge wait and that derails it entirely. And it makes sense. If you've got an audience desperate to see something happen and then it doesn't, you give up. Why hold on to something that you don't believe in anymore? We've all seen it though, and what's worse is that we will see it again. It hurts every time. I'm Simon from What Culture. Please do hit that subscribe button. This is 10 wrestlers who had their trigger pulled way too late. I don't mean that in a dirty way. Number 10, The Fiend. This one was controversial from the off because some fans didn't think The Fiend should even be going after a championship given that he was nuts. One of those characters that didn't have to worry about gold and could just exist on the show and still be popular. They may have had a point, but WWE disagreed, which is why after Bray Wyatt had destroyed Finn Balor at SummerSlam, he was soon programmed against Seth Rollins for the Universal title. He had become so beloved, fans were still excited, and it seemed obvious that we would capitalize on this and just make him the champ at Hell in a Cell. We should have known better, because WWE did not do this, and we all remember what happened next. It's like a car wreck. Even management realized this, however, because a few weeks later they tried to undo this mistake by having The Fiend win Raw's major prize at Crown Jewel, but it was too late. It was good that they did try to make amends, but by that point the wounds were too real and the magic had died a little. There's still loads of potential with Wyatt, of course, but this still stands as an obvious situation where everything went wrong. Number 9, Mr. Kennedy. Kennedy. Set up for all the glory after winning the Money in the Bank match at WrestleMania 23, he was also going to be Vince McMahon's illegitimate son. I mean, that is massive, and if it had gone down, he likely would have had a job for life. Sadly, due to a wellness policy violation, injuries, and a really mad Randy Orton, he was let go in 2009, and we have never seen him back in a WWE ring. Even then though, he did find a second lease of life in TNA, but when there they didn't even give him the world title till 2011. It's not like he didn't deserve it, but really he should have walked through the door and blitzed the place to show everyone what they now had and what the other place didn't. It was the same when he was the briefcase holder, which also never went anywhere, and it was just one big missed opportunity. Kennedy was so over at one point he looked like he would be riding high for years. Wrestling is a bizarre roller coaster. Number 8, Rob Van Dam. Nobody was more popular than Rob Van Dam when it came to ECW guys making the jump across to WWE. Having an instant relationship with the fans, he was cheered even when part of the alliance, to the point RVD never really felt part of it. He was on his own island, just floating along. This is why when we had the first ever brand split, he seemed like a contender to at least get his own run with the World Heavyweight Championship. The crowd wanted it, WWE needed something different, but it never happened. Instead, Triple H just awarded himself the title and held onto it for ages, including beating Van Dam at Unforgiven in 2002, which was his one and only shot at it. It would be 4 years till he beat John Cena at One Night Stand for the WWE Championship, and while this was received very well, it did feel like it should have happened years earlier. If WWE had wanted to truly make him a main event guy, they should have pulled the trigger when he clashed with Triple H, but that is the point. They didn't, and now it's all reserved for lists like this. Number 7, Ember Moon. Asuka's undefeated streak as NXT Women's Champion made that division. She was awesome, believable, and kicked everybody's ass, and fans were desperate to see who would be the one to break it. Ember Moon seemed like a good choice. On her own winning run and having great matches with everybody, the two would eventually clash at TakeOver Orlando with everything on the line. Only one would leave with the title and a perfect record. If WWE had wanted to cement Moon as a top guy, this was the time, and yet we didn't. Asuka got the W as she did a month later in Chicago, a match that Ember wasn't able to compete in because of injury. When she came back and tangled with Asuka again in New York, she lost. Of course! When Moon finally did win the belt, Asuka was long gone from NXT, and that just didn't help. It made it seem like it was her vacation and absence that allowed Ember to rise to the top, meaning she was only ever gonna be number 2. And believe you me, nobody wants to be number 2. Number 6, Bret Hart. How WCW screwed up Bret Hart when he jumped ship is unknown. Aside from being one of the biggest stars in the business, we were coming off Survivor Series 1997, which had shone an even bigger spotlight onto what the Hitman was going to do next. Turns out what that was suck. For one, his first appearance was at Starrcade 97, which was just one big botch, and after that he found himself on the wrong end of the NWO. For younger viewers listening right now, that means being beaten up every week for no real reason. Hart should have just walked in as a top guy, but World Championship Wrestling didn't give him the world title for 2 years, and by then, he was just another dude. They weren't particularly great reigns either, and we went from the hottest prospect there was in 1997 to Bret just being a guy called Bret in 1999. I've said it before and I'll say it again, WCW was, is, and always will be bonkers. Number 5, Cain. Given that Cain has been around for 22 years, it's crazy how little he was in the main event scene. He did have 3 world title reigns, but one of those was the ECW Championship, and the other was the then WWF belt, but that lasted all of 24 hours. Doesn't really count. His only proper run came in 2011 when he won the World Heavyweight title and held it for 154 days. Getting it from Rey Mysterio after cashing in his Money in the Bank, it also wasn't ideal. No one seemed into the following feuds with The Undertaker and Edge, with the latter winning Worst Program of the Year in the Wrestling Observer. Sweet. So it was just mistimed, especially when during the Attitude Era he had all the momentum there was. That version of the character was also the one the fans preferred, so having to wait an extra decade, well, it didn't really click. I do want to say, as I always do when I talk about Cain, I loved him, and I always will. He was the best. Number 4, Roman Reigns. We all knew what was going to happen in the main event at WrestleMania 34. The big dog, Roman Reigns, was finally going to get his revenge on Brock Lesnar and win the Universal title. It was obvious, even though it wasn't. Instead, Lesnar retained his belt as everybody scratched their heads, especially as there were rumors at the time that the Beast was leaving WWE and going back to UFC. Clearly he wasn't. This then happened again at the Greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia, and we didn't follow through with this until SummerSlam 2018, a whopping 4 months later. Dragging all this out just annoyed the fans, as it felt like it was never going to end, and WWE seemed to know this too. They cut the live feed almost instantly as soon as SummerSlam was done. It got even weirder after this, and kind of is still bizarre in 2019, but still, what on earth were we doing back then? Number 3, Booker T. WrestleMania 19 is a great event. There are numerous matches that are still awesome to watch today, but unfortunately it's marred by one ridiculous decision that will always baffle. Booker T had been built up as a rag to riches babyface who had turned his life around. He had to endure racist comments as the feud between him and Triple H increased, so it seemed like the only option was to let the good guy win and get his revenge, but the answer to that was nope. Not only did Booker lose, but he got pinned after both men had been down for about 78 years following a pedigree. That made it worse because you thought that this was going to be a false finish, but instead Triple H just crawled over him really slowly and beat him. Sucked. We should have used this to launch Booker T into the stratosphere instead of waiting 3 more years before finally doing it when he won the King of the Ring and changed his character. King Booker is great, never get me wrong, but still, this will never ever get any easier. Number 2, CM Punk. CM Punk beating John Cena at the Money in the Bank 2011 is some of the best booking WWE has ever done. Punk was hotter than hell, the story was great, and it was the only move to make. You know how that goes, so the fact it actually did happen was just awesome. Everybody won for around about a month. Despite beating Cena again at SummerSlam, all of a sudden the bizarreness started to happen, and it's bizarreness that nobody wanted. Alberto Del Rio was cashing in his Money in the Bank and winning the title, and he did this with the help from Kevin Nash. The hell was this? The voice of the voiceless then spent the next few months feuding and losing till Triple H until he did get his belt back at Survivor Series, where he'd held on to it for 434 days. That rocked, but everything beforehand had derailed the summer of Punk because it was just so confusing. It's like WWE wanted the fans to give up on him, but when they didn't, they just said to hell with it. CM Punk returned on WWE Backstage recently. I cannot wait to see what happens now. Number 1, Goldberg. When Goldberg arrived in WWE in 2003, he was a top draw. Despite WCW dying 2 years prior and Bill missing the invasion angle, everyone knew who he was and was desperate to see what he could do in a WWE ring. It was exciting. It started alright too. He was undefeated for 6 months, beating the likes of Chris Jericho, The Rock, and 3-minute warning, but his luck ran out when he entered the Elimination Chamber vying for Triple H's title. Didn't go well. Once again, despite everyone going, yeah, this is the time to do it, WWE had a better idea and just had the game keep hold of his belt. Then a month later, we changed our minds and gave it to Bill. It was baffling, took away all of Goldberg's powers, and it was no surprise when he left the following April. The positive step out of all of this is that Goldberg was able to return to the company years later and finally been booked as the Goldberg we knew from World Championship Wrestling, but that doesn't explain what WWE was thinking in 2003 and 2004. You pay a man millions of dollars just to try and humiliate him. That makes all the sense in the world to me, and as you can't see my face, I'm saying that while smiling like a buffoon. Know of any other wrestlers who had their trigger pulled way too late, not in a dirty way? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from What Culture. I hope you have a damn good day, and I'll talk to you when I talk to you.